I bought my first home after years of sacrifice. Then my sister used a spare key to break in with her kids, thinking I'd just give it up. What happened next destroyed what little family I had left. They say blood is thicker than water. But what are you supposed to do when your own blood shows up at your house uninvited, uses a spare key you never gave her permission to have, and moves in with her entire family like she owns the place? I'm Hailey. I'm 29 and from a quiet suburb in Oregon, though I wouldn't call my life peaceful. For as long as I can remember, I've lived in the shadow of my older sister, Brooke. She's 3 years older than me and has always been the family favorite, the kind of person who turns every mistake into a charming anecdote, who floats through life with effortless ease while the rest of us carry the weight. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, which, in our family, basically meant the one who gets ignored unless someone needs something. It started young. Brooke's birthdays were extravagant backyard parties with catered food, inflatable castles, and ponies. Mine, store-bought cake in the dining room and a slice of pizza if we were lucky. When I pointed out the difference, I got the same old line. Be grateful, Hailey. You don't need all that. But oddly, Brooke was never expected to be grateful. It hit me hardest when I got into college. I had worked through high school, honors courses, a part-time job, volunteering on weekends. I got accepted into a solid state university just 20 minutes away. My plan was to live at home and commute, to save on rent and avoid loans. It seemed practical, reasonable. Brooke had gone out of state for college. My parents paid for everything: tuition, dorm, spending money, even a car. So when I told them my plan, I expected at least a fraction of that support. Instead, my mom raised an eyebrow and said, "If you're staying here, you'll need to contribute." She said it like she was doing me a favor. They charged me $450 a month in rent and utilities. On top of that, I had to buy my own groceries. At 18, I was working part-time at a bookstore for $10 an hour. No car, no safety net, just a growing resentment I didn't yet know how to express. I brought up how they'd supported Brooke. Brooke deserved it, Mom said flatly. You're more independent. You'll figure it out. And I did. I worked every shift I could. I skipped meals. I borrowed used textbooks and walked everywhere because I couldn't afford to fix my car's AC, let alone replace it. Meanwhile, Brooke was living in a brand new dorm my parents helped pay for. I once overheard my mom on the phone, saying, "We just don't want her to struggle. College is already hard enough." I stared down at my 99-cent ramen noodles and wondered why no one ever said that about me. When Brooke graduated with a 3.2 in communications, my parents threw a huge backyard party with catering, a DJ, and matching decorations. When I graduated with a 3.9 in computer science, we had lasagna at home. No need to make a fuss, Mom said. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was the message, you don't matter as much. After that, I moved out, found a tiny, overpriced apartment close to my job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I paid my bills, cooked my own meals, lived modestly, and saved what I could. Meanwhile, Brooke married Matt, a man my parents adored even though he hadn't held a steady job in years. They had 3 kids, Sophie, 5, Liam, 4, and Noah, 2. Every time their car broke down or daycare got too expensive, my parents stepped in. No one expected Brooke to figure anything out on her own. I tried not to care. Really, I did. But it stung every time. So eventually, I stopped sharing my life with them altogether. No announcements. No updates. They wouldn't listen anyway. Which brings us to last spring. After nearly a decade of living paycheck to paycheck, I was finally in a place to buy a home. I'd saved diligently, skipped vacations, passed on luxuries. I wanted something modest, a cozy place just for me. I didn't tell anyone, not out of secrecy, but because I knew how it would go. If I mentioned it, they'd try to make it a family decision, meaning Brooke and her kids would become part of the plan. I couldn't afford to let that happen. But somehow, a coworker, let's call her Cindy, overheard me on a call about a mortgage application. Cindy is the type who lives for gossip. Within days, she'd told her neighbor. Her neighbor, it turned out, lived down the street from Brooke. Small-town gossip moves fast. 3 days later, I got the call from my mother. "Hailey," she cooed, her voice thick with faux sweetness. "Why didn't you tell us you're looking for a house?" I should have played dumb. Instead, I said, "Oh, I'm just browsing. Nothing serious yet." "Well," she chirped, "Brooke and I have some great ideas. You're going to need at least 4 bedrooms. The kids need their own space. And wouldn't it be lovely if it were close to Brooke's place? The house I hadn't even found yet was already being colonized. They started flooding me with listings, 5-bedroom homes with pools and finished basements. My mom once texted me a listing and said, "Perfect. There's even a man cave for Matt." Another time, Brooke sent me a Zillow link and wrote, "This one's ideal for us." I stared at the message, wondering when my house became our house. Every place they suggested was clearly for them. One had a playroom. One had a guest suite for my parents. One had a giant kitchen that Brooke said would be perfect for family holidays. I started ignoring them, silenced the group chat, kept scrolling through listings alone in silence. Eventually, I found it. A little 2-bedroom cottage on the edge of town. Sunlight poured through the windows. The porch felt like peace. The kitchen was small but bright, and the backyard had space for a garden. It wasn't much, but it was everything I wanted. I made an offer. It was accepted, and I told no one. I let them keep texting me listings I had no intention of looking at. I smiled and nodded during family dinners. And all the while, I was packing boxes and preparing to move. Then Mom called again, right before the move. "We're having dinner next weekend," she said. "You coming?" I almost said no. But then I thought, screw it. Let's get this over with. They have no idea I've already bought a house. And they're about to find out. I arrived at my parents' house 5 minutes early. Not out of politeness, just strategy. If I was going to drop a bomb, I didn't want them saying I was late and using it to shift the conversation. I sat in the driveway for a minute, watching the porch light flicker slightly above the door, thinking about how many dinners like this I'd sat through. Smiling, nodding, swallowing my frustration like lukewarm wine. Not tonight. The moment I stepped inside, the chaos hit me like a wall. Sophie and Liam were shrieking over a toy, Noah was fussing in his high chair, and Brooke was half-heartedly scolding them while scrolling her phone. Matt was parked on the couch, feet up, scrolling through a sports app like this wasn't his circus. And Mom, bless her Olympic-level denial, was darting between the stove and the dining table like this mess was perfectly normal. She glanced up as I walked in. "Oh good, you're on time for once." I bit back the urge to respond with sarcasm. Wouldn't want to miss it. We sat down for dinner and, as expected, the conversation circled the usual drain. Dad grumbled about gas prices, Matt whined about job interviews he never seemed to land, and Brooke launched into her favorite routine. Why being a mother is the hardest job in the world. Noah's been teething again, she sighed dramatically, spooning mashed potatoes onto her plate. He was up every hour last night, and we're just so cramped. I swear, I can't even breathe in that apartment. I didn't respond. I just listened, swirling my water, knowing exactly where this was going. I'd heard this build up before. It always ended the same way, with a request disguised as a crisis. Then it came. Mom cleared her throat. Not the light, past the salt, kind of throat clearing. This was her classic announcement incoming signal. "Hailey," she said, all smiles and rehearsed warmth. "We've been talking, and we think we found the perfect house for you." My heart didn't skip a beat. It spiked like it had been thrown off a cliff. "Oh," I asked, keeping my voice steady. Brooke practically bounced in her seat. "It's just a few blocks from us. 5 bedrooms, huge backyard, even a separate guest suite. For everyone," Mom added. "The kids could each have their own rooms. Matt could finally set up a proper office. And it's near amazing schools." It was surreal, like watching a play where everyone was acting out a scene they'd rehearsed without me. "We can go see it tomorrow if you want," Brooke said, beaming like it was already sold. I set my fork down gently. "Actually," I said, "I've already bought a house." Silence. Even Noah stopped whining. The only sound was the faint clink of someone setting their glass down too fast. "What?" Mom asked, her voice clipped and cold. "I bought a house," I said again. "A small 2-bedroom cottage. Just outside the city. It's exactly what I wanted." Brooke blinked. "A cottage? How are we supposed to fit in a cottage?" "You're not," I said. "It's not for you. It's for me." The words dropped like a hammer, and the impact was instant. Mom's cheeks turned scarlet. "How could you make a decision like that without telling us? We've been doing all this work to help you." "No," I corrected her. "You've been doing all this work to help Brooke. You weren't looking for my house. You were building a backup plan for hers." Brooke's voice trembled. "But we need space, Hailey. The kids are sharing a room. We can't afford another rent increase. It's not fair to them." I exhaled slowly. It's not my job to fix your life, Brooke. I've worked hard for years to get here, and I'm not giving it all up because you're uncomfortable. Dad slammed his hand on the table, rattling the plates. You're being selfish. Family helps each other. What's wrong with you? I stood up. I'm not being selfish. I'm setting boundaries. And if that makes me the villain in your story, fine. The room exploded. Brooke was crying. Mom launched into a monologue about how she'd raised me better. Dad muttered about being disappointed in who I'd become. Matt, per usual, said nothing, just shoveled food in like he was waiting out a storm. I grabbed my bag. Mom followed me to the door. You can't just walk away from your family. I looked her dead in the eye. Watch me. Then I left. When I got home, I sat on my new porch for a long time, wrapped in a blanket, tea cooling beside me. The stars were sharp and clear, the air cold and clean. For the first time in my life, I felt like everything I owned, including my peace, was mine. Of course, I knew they wouldn't let it go, but I had no idea just how far they'd go to prove me right. That night, I barely slept. Not because of guilt, because of rage. The text started before I'd even taken off my shoes. First, Brooke, a photo of Sophie and Liam sitting cross-legged on their bunk bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and building blocks. The caption, look how cramped we are. Do you really think this is fair to them? I didn't respond. Then came the barrage. You've changed, Hailey. This isn't the sister I grew up with. Mom is sick over this. She couldn't sleep. You always said family mattered. What happened to you? Each message burrowed deeper, not because I believed them, but because I did once. I used to believe family meant support. That loving someone meant lifting each other, not weighing them down. That belief started to crumble long ago, but this was the wrecking ball. By morning, I had 10 missed calls. 5 were from my mom, 1 from Dad, 4 from Brooke, all ignored. But the worst? The voicemail from my father. His voice was full of fire. You're tearing this family apart, Hailey. For what? A cottage? A patch of grass? I hope you're proud. I didn't even finish listening. I turned my phone on silent, pulled the covers over my head, and remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. It was the spring before high school. I was 15. Brooke had just gotten her license, and she was already treating me like her personal assistant. That weekend, she had a party to go to, and Mom was too tired to drive her. So I offered. I didn't even have my permit yet, but I figured we'd just go around the block. Brooke handed me the keys and said, don't scratch it. I didn't. But when we pulled into the driveway, Dad was already outside, arms crossed. His voice was flat. Get out. He tore into me like I'd committed a felony. Brooke stood behind him, wide-eyed, not saying a word. The next day, she told everyone at school that I stole the car. I got grounded for 2 weeks. She got a new iPod. That was the moment, I think, when I realized Brooke wasn't the golden child just because she was lucky. She was made that way. Protected. Polished. Never held accountable. And I was the shadow she stood in, expected to smile while she blocked out the sun. Now, all these years later, it was happening again. Only this time, I had something to lose. That afternoon, I opened Facebook to unwind. Big mistake. Brooke had posted a photo of the kids squished together in their room again, captioned, all they want is a little space to grow. Some people forget what family is about. The comments were full of pity and praise. You're such a strong mom. Whoever abandoned you guys should be ashamed. Keep your head up, girl. Karma's real. I logged out before I could reply something I'd regret. Later that evening, I saw the real kicker. My mother had posted a photo of my cottage. My house. My sanctuary. Somehow, she had gotten a picture of it from the listing. And underneath it, she wrote, so sad when people forget where they came from. We gave up everything for her. That was it. I blocked them all. Phone, Facebook, email, even distant cousins who might chime in with guilt trips disguised as just checking in. I deleted my Instagram, changed my privacy settings, and left my phone on Do Not Disturb indefinitely. It felt like stepping out of a blizzard and into still air. For 2 days, nothing. No texts. No voicemails. No surprise visits. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd gotten the message. Until Wednesday night. There was a knock at my door. 3 taps. Then silence. I froze. No one ever visits. Not out here. I walked slowly to the front, heart thudding like a warning drum. I peeked through the curtain. It was Brooke, with Noah in one arm, and Sophie and Liam standing behind her, clutching backpacks. I opened the door only a crack. just enough to see her face. "Hailey," she said, voice trembling, "we need to talk." Her eyes were red, her lip bitten raw. Behind her, the kids looked like they'd just woken up from a long car ride. "We don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. "The landlord raised our rent again. We can't afford it. Just let us stay, just for a little while." I didn't move. "Please," she said. "The kids need stability." I felt my throat tighten. There was a part of me, an old part, that wanted to let them in. The part that still believed that if I was just kind enough, they'd love me the way I wanted them to. But that part of me had been burned too many times. "I'm sorry, Brooke," I said quietly, "but this isn't your home." Her face collapsed. "So that's it? You're going to let us suffer?" "I didn't do this to you," I replied. "I'm not your safety net anymore." She turned away, muttering something I couldn't hear, and walked back to her car. The kids followed, their shoes crunching against the gravel. I closed the door and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if I'd done the right thing, but I was sure of one thing. This wasn't over. It had been 4 days since Brooke showed up at my door with her kids. 4 quiet days. No texts, no calls, no guilt-ridden Facebook posts or midnight voicemails. For the first time in months, it felt like peace. But with my family, peace is usually the quiet before the ambush. It was Saturday, and I was outside, elbows deep in my struggling flower bed, trying to coax life out of some poor lavender plant that Google had promised was low maintenance. I'd already killed 2. That's when I heard the knock. 3 precise taps on the front door. I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans. No one ever visited unannounced, not out here. When I turned the corner, my stomach dropped. There she was, my mother, standing on the porch with a pie in her hands and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi, Hailey," she said brightly, like we were best friends and nothing had happened. "I brought your favorite apple. My favorite is cherry. She's known that since 1999. I was just in the neighborhood," she added, brushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. She set the pie on the kitchen counter and looked around, her eyes scanning everything. The layout, the furniture, the locks, as if she were appraising the place. "This is really lovely, Hailey," she said, fingers grazing the back of one of my dining chairs. "You've made a beautiful home." I didn't say anything, just watched her, arms crossed. She sat down at the kitchen table and sighed, performing concern like it was a monologue. "I came to apologize. We let things get too heated. It wasn't right. You've worked hard for this, and we should have respected that." It sounded nice. Too nice. Rehearsed, even. Still, part of me wanted to believe it. That part of me shriveled up the second she said. "I was thinking, maybe we could have a fresh start. I'd love to come by again sometime. Maybe bring Brooke and the kids. They'd love to see your new place." There it was. The real reason she came. I met her gaze squarely. "I don't think that's a good idea." She nodded, too quickly. Of course. I just thought, never mind." She stayed for another 5 minutes, making small talk and eyeing everything like she was mentally rearranging the rooms. Then she gave me a long, tight hug and said, "I just want us to be a family again." After she left, I stared at the pie on the counter for a long time. Something about the visit felt wrong, not just awkward, off. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was reconnaissance. And I was right. For days later, everything came crashing down. It was a regular Thursday. I'd been working from home all morning, holed up in my little office, headphones in, hyper-focused on deadlines. Around noon, I ran out to grab groceries. Just an hour. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw it. Brooke's SUV parked in front of my house. No. I sprinted to the door, heart pounding. I fumbled with my keys, hearing voices, children, laughter, a pan clanging in the kitchen. I stepped inside and stopped cold. Brooke was in the sunroom, rearranging furniture. Matt was in the kitchen, eating a sandwich, my sandwich. Sophie and Liam were sprawled on the couch, surrounded by toys that weren't theirs. Noah was toddling through the living room with one of my throw pillows jammed in his mouth, like a teething ring. I couldn't breathe. What the hell is going on? I managed. Brooke looked up casually. "Oh, hey, Hailey. We figured it'd be easier to just move in while you were out." "You what?" "Mom gave us the spare key," she said, pointing to it on the counter. I stared at the key, the one I left out when Mom visited. "You can't be serious." Matt chimed in, shrugging. "You're single. You don't need all this space. This house makes more sense for us." My vision tunneled. My voice dropped. Get out. Come on, Hailey, Brooks said, as if I were overreacting. The kids love it here. We've already started settling in. It's not like you're using all this space anyway. I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone. 911. What's your emergency? My sister and her family broke into my house. They're refusing to leave. Brooks' face turned pale. You're calling the cops? On your own family? I held the phone up. Watch me. The 911 dispatcher kept her voice calm. I couldn't match it. As I relayed the situation, how my sister had used a spare key to break in with her family and refused to leave, I could barely control my breathing. My hands were trembling, my throat dry. I wasn't just angry, I was gutted. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal, premeditated and smugly executed. The cops arrived 10 minutes later. 2 patrol cars. 1 female officer, 1 male. Calm but alert. They knocked. I opened the door. My sister Brooke was in the sunroom like she owned the place, fluffing throw pillows that had bite marks from her toddler. Matt was lounging on the couch with a half-eaten sandwich. Their 3 kids had exploded into the living room. Snacks everywhere. Toys I didn't own littering the rug. Good afternoon, the officer said to me. You're the homeowner? Yes. She nodded. And they entered without your permission? I swallowed hard and nodded. They used a spare key I didn't give them. That's when Brooke finally noticed things were escalating beyond her control. She rushed over, eyes wide with fake surprise. Officers, this is just a big misunderstanding. We're family. Mom said it'd be fine. The male cop raised an eyebrow. Are you on the lease? Do you have written permission to be here? No, but... Then this is trespassing, he said flatly. Matt stood up, crossing his arms. Come on, man. She's single. Look at this place. It's way too big for one person. We're a family of 5. It just makes sense. The audacity of it nearly floored me. The female officer turned to me. Would you like them removed from the premises? I nodded. Brooks' voice cracked. Please, Hailey, don't do this. We just needed some help. We thought you'd understand. I did understand, I said, voice shaking. That's why I kept quiet for months. That's why I tried to set boundaries. You ignored all of it. The officers instructed them to pack up their things and leave immediately. It wasn't fast or quiet. The kids were crying. Matt was muttering under his breath about how unbelievable I was. Brooke tried once more to plead, to guilt-trip me, to spin a news story. I didn't engage. I just stood by the door, arms folded, while they collected the snacks they'd stolen from my pantry and the jackets they'd flung across my furniture. Once the last of them was out, the officers turned to me. Would you like to press charges? I paused. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But not out of spite. I just wanted peace. No, I said. As long as they stay away. But if they come back, I won't hesitate. They nodded. We'll file a report. If anything happens again, call us. After they left, I locked the door and slumped onto the nearest chair. The silence was different now. Heavier. Not peaceful, yet. But clean. Like fresh air after a storm. That night, I changed the locks. The next morning, I called a lawyer. He helped me draft cease and desist letters for my mother, Brooke, and Matt. The message was crystal clear, no more contact. Any future harassment would result in legal action. And I followed through. I blocked every number, every email. Increased privacy settings on all social media. Cut off anyone who might try to mediate. Then I sat in my little sunlit kitchen, sipping my first real coffee in what felt like a lifetime, and let it hit me. It was over. They might rage, they might smear, but they were finally, out of my house, out of my phone, out of my life. Later that day, a voicemail came in from my mother. I recognized her voice even before she finished the first sentence. I can't believe you would call the police on your own sister. This isn't the daughter I raised. Delete. No reply. No explanation. No more. My house is mine again. Quiet. Safe. I have a garden to fix, a job to enjoy, and a front door that only opens for people who respect me.